Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. Governments around the globe have rolled out tougher measures to halt the rapid spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Worldwide, cases surged past 300,000 on Sunday as Asia braced for a possible second wave of infections. Latest figures show at least 13,000 people have died from the virus worldwide. Details in this report.
Nearly 1 billion people are confined to their homes around the world as countries race to contain the outbreak. In India, the government imposed a nationwide curfew, heavily restricting the movement of more than 1 billion people. There are 332 confirmed cases in India, with 3 deaths recorded so far. In Bangladesh, 2 people have died from the virus, while 4 additional patients were diagnosed, raising the number of cases to 24. Authorities in Afghanistan reported 10 additional confirmed cases, including 2 in the capital Kabul for the first time, taking the total to 34. Kabul's health ministry reported the country's first confirmed death from the coronavirus. In the Middle East, Iraq imposed a total nationwide lockdown until March 28th to fight the virus, as the death toll climbed to 20. Iran is one of the countries hardest hit by the virus, with an official death toll of more than 1,600 and over 21,000 confirmed cases. The Lebanese health ministry, meanwhile, has recorded a 29% rise in cases from the day before, bringing the total to 230 with 4 deaths. Saudi Arabia reported 119 new infections, bringing the total number of cases to 511. Israel has confirmed 1,000 cases of the outbreak, with 1 death reported in the country so far. In North America, the virus has claimed nearly 317 lives in the US, infecting more than 24,000 people. On Saturday, a ban on non-essential travel across the US-Canada border came into effect at midnight. There have been more than 1,300 cases and 19 deaths due to the COVID-19 in Canada. In Mexico, health authorities said that there are 251 confirmed cases with 2 deaths, 48 more cases than a day earlier. The number of infections in Australia has risen to 1,098 as of Sunday, with 7 deaths linked to the illness. Australian Prime Minister announced that all non-essential services have been shut down in the country. New Zealand, meanwhile, has 14 new cases of COVID-19, bringing the country's total number of cases to 66. The pandemic has sparked fears of global recession, prompting governments to unleash gigantic emergency measures to avoid an economic meltdown.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has ruled out a complete lockdown in the country amid the coronavirus pandemic. In a televised speech, Khan said a complete shutdown would be devastating for the poor. He said that the virus could be curbed if people stopped attending gatherings and weddings and started staying at home. Citing China's example, the Prime Minister said that Pakistan could also come out of this pandemic if the public was disciplined. Pakistan has already shut down all the shopping malls and eateries. Meanwhile, the provincial government of Sindh is imposing a 15-day lockdown from midnight tonight. Spain has reported 394 new coronavirus deaths in the country, which is up by 30% in 24 hours. The health ministry says Spain's death toll from the coronavirus soared to 1,720 on Sunday from 1,326 the day before. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez warned that the worst part of the outbreak hitting Spain is yet to come, while France observed its 6th day of lockdown, leaving the streets of the capital Paris deserted. The country's death toll from the virus reached 562. In Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson called on the public to join a collective national effort and follow social distancing advice, as the country's confirmed cases topped 5,000, leaving 240 dead. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Health Ministry has confirmed the first 2 cases of the virus in the Gaza Strip. Palestinian authorities have already reported 53 coronavirus cases in the occupied West Bank, including 17 recoveries. The Russian military will start sending medical help to Italy from Sunday to help it battle the new coronavirus. So Russia's defense ministry has confirmed the sending of military assistance after receiving orders from President Vladimir Putin. More in this report.
Putin spoke to Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte on Saturday, offering his support in the worst-hit Italian regions. Moscow said that army planes will deliver 8 mobile brigades of military medics, special disinfection vehicles, and other medical equipment to Italy. The defense ministry said Russia will also send about 100 military specialists in virology and epidemics. Italy recorded a jump in deaths from the coronavirus of almost 800 on Saturday, taking the toll in the world's hardest-hit country to almost 5,000. Russia itself has reported 306 cases of the virus, most of them in Moscow, and 1 coronavirus-related death.
Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Islamabad is ready to host the SAARC conference involving the region's health ministers. He said this in a telephonic call to his Nepalese counterpart Pradeep Kumar Gyawali. Qureshi suggested that a video conference could be organized to formulate a strategy regarding the current global health emergency. The two foreign ministers also discussed ways to enhance mutual cooperation to combat the coronavirus pandemic. Qureshi said Pakistan has a stance that sanctions on Iran should be lifted so that relief can be provided at this time of crisis. The two officials reiterated mutual commitment to strengthen friendship as both the countries are observing 60th anniversary of the diplomatic ties. Foreign Minister Qureshi has also spoken with his Sri Lankan counterpart on tackling the coronavirus pandemic. In the US, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says the number of coronavirus patients in the city has risen to 8,000. He said this accounts for a third of all the virus cases in the US. De Blasio warned that medical supplies needed to tackle the outbreak will start running short in 10 days. He said if more ventilators are not provided in the next 10 days, people will die who don't have to die. In a stark warning, de Blasio said this is going to be the greatest crisis domestically since the Great Depression. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says the economic relief bill being finalized for the American families includes one-time payment of $3,000. He said it will allow the Federal Reserve to leverage up to $4 trillion in liquidity to support the national economy. Meanwhile, Iran has refused US assistance to fight the new coronavirus, citing the unfounded theory that Washington made the virus. In a televised address, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Washington's medicine could be a way to spread the virus more. The Supreme Leader said America is itself facing a shortage, so it should treat its own patients first. Khamenei said therapists and doctors sent by the US could be a surveillance tactic. He said the Islamic Republic has the capability to overcome any kind of crisis, including the coronavirus pandemic. Iran is the most affected country in the Middle East, with over 1,500 coronavirus deaths and 20,610 infected people. Medical charity MSF is setting up a 50-bed emergency center to treat severe COVID-19 cases in Iran. The French organization said a team of 9 intensive care medics will staff the facility on the ground of the Amin Hospital in Isfahan. MSF said the aircraft should be ready to leave at the weekend. France is already contributing to a package of medical aid for Iran alongside Britain and Germany. This comes amid signs that the global fight against the coronavirus could help ease some diplomatic tensions. In recent days, Tehran freed a French academic in a prisoner swap that also saw the release of an Iranian engineer held in France. In India, thousands of city migrants are returning to their villages as their livelihoods collapse in the wake of the new coronavirus. This has raised fears that the pandemic could spread to the rural areas in one of the world's most densely populated countries. Details in this report. The number of coronavirus infections in India has crossed 290. 52 of these cases were detected in the western state of Maharashtra, where all shops and offices have been closed till the end of the month. This has caused a massive economic shock, hitting migrants from the rural areas the hardest. These people are now headed back to their family homes in droves, raising concerns about increasing the outbreak's spread.
The place where I used to work has been closed till March 31st, so that's why we are going to our homes.
There's already a crisis at railway stations where passengers have congregated in large numbers, turning them into a possible hotspots of infection.
We appeal to the people that they should not gather unnecessarily at station premises and ticket counters, and they should instead book tickets online. And they should not form a crowd at the stations by arriving before the scheduled departure of the trains.
The country's COVID-19 death toll stands at 5, but currently India is only testing 90 people a day, an extraordinarily low number for the world's second most populous nation. Experts have warned the consequences of this approach could become horrifyingly apparent in the coming days. A country of 1.3 billion people with weak public health care in its rural areas is a disaster waiting to happen. Moreover, in India, protests continue against the Discriminatory Citizenship Act despite curfew and coronavirus threat. The Indian government has announced 14-hour-long curfew across the country today in a bid to curb the spread of the COVID-19. Women at Shaheen Bagh in New Delhi have refused to end their sit-in despite the government's ban on a gathering of over 50 people. Talking to media, the organizers said not more than 50 women are staging a protest at any given time. Meanwhile, protesters at Bhiwandi city in Maharashtra state have also announced not to end the sit-in. The organizers said there will not be a large gathering, but only 5 healthy women protesting at a time in Bhiwandi. Meanwhile, India's internet ban in occupied Kashmir has hit education as students fail to send admissions and take online courses. The valley has been reeling under curfew and clampdown for the last 231 days. Talking to media, students said they cannot apply for the studies outside the valley because of the internet issue. The students said many of them started online classes, but internet suspension on August the 5th has halted these courses. They said in the name of national security, Indian government is ruining thousands of careers. The communications blackout has already hit the health sector of the valley after it reported its first coronavirus case. The doctors and health workers have asked the Indian government to end communications blackout to counter the epidemic. 2 prisoners are dead and 6 others injured after fighting broke out in a Sri Lankan jail over coronavirus restrictions. Tensions erupted at the Anuradhapura prison when guards tried to control the riot. Police said prisoners were complaining about the decision by authorities not to allow visitors as a move to contain the virus. They said in the commotion, guards opened fire to prevent inmates from fleeing and violence inside the jail. Sri Lanka has imposed a 3-day countrywide curfew since Friday as the number of the cases has risen to 77. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims he is nearing a power-sharing deal with his centrist political rival, but Blue and White Party leader Benny Gantz swiftly denied the claim. In an interview, Netanyahu said under the agreement, former General Benny Gantz will replace him as Prime Minister after 18 months. He said he wants to form a government to confront the coronavirus crisis and end the political deadlock in the country. In a tweet, Gantz said anyone who wants unity does not impose ultimatums, hurt democracy, or paralyze the parliament. Last week, Netanyahu bypassed parliament and enacted emergency regulations allowing the security forces to use anti-terrorist cyber tracking of the coronavirus patients. In Libya, the UN-recognized government says a rocket attack by Khalifa Haftar's forces has killed one person and wounded two children in Anzara, south of Tripoli. Despite the ceasefire truce, renegade commander Khalifa Haftar's militias continue their attacks. Yesterday, Washington backed the UN-facilitated dialogue among warring sides for a lasting ceasefire. Earlier, the UN called on the warring sides to accept the draft ceasefire accord negotiated between the joint military commissions in Geneva last month. The GNA has been under attack by the Haftar's forces since last April, with over 1,000 people killed in the violence. Nigeria's government forces have rescued 9 kidnapped people during recent raids on the gunmen hideouts in the country's northwest. The military says, based on information from military intelligence, the troops raided the hideouts in Zamfara state. It said 7 men and 2 women rescued from the town of Gando have been reunited with their families. Another 22 kidnapped people were also recently rescued from gunmen's hideouts in the neighboring states of Katsina, Kebbi, and Sokoto. Guinea has held a constitutional referendum despite the threat of the coronavirus. The referendum will allow the president to govern for 12 more years. President Alpha Condé has proposed changes in the constitution that would codify gender equality and introduce other social reforms. But the opposition boycotted the referendum, calling it a ploy to allow Condé to run for a 3rd term in office. Voting was marred by attacks on several polling stations in the country's capital, Conakry. Responding, security forces quickly contained the pockets of the unrest. Originally scheduled for March the 1st, the referendum was postponed because international observers raised concerns about the electoral register. Mexico says 1 person was killed as a Navy helicopter crashed in the country's southern state of Veracruz. The Mexican Secretariat of the Navy said 10 other officers were injured in the accident. Veracruz Governor Joaquin Jimenez said the helicopter was carrying 11 people. He said the copter was on a mission to rescue kidnapped people in the municipality of Zongolica in the south. Mexico's Minister of Civilian Protection, Hugo Guterres, says a rescue operation is underway at the crash site and the injured are being assisted. A 5.3 magnitude earthquake has shaken Croatia's capital city of Zagreb, killing a boy and causing widespread damage. GFZ, German Research Center for Geosciences, says the quake struck at a depth of 10 kilometers. Many buildings in Zagreb have cracked and walls and rooftops are damaged. Downtown streets are littered with debris as concrete slabs fell on cars and chimneys landed in front of the entrances. The earthquake struck amid a partial lockdown of the capital because of the spread of the coronavirus. Bolivia has postponed presidential election and imposed a mandatory countrywide quarantine for 14 days amid COVID-19. Country's electoral authority says new election date will be decided together with the political parties and the organizations. Bolivia has so far reported 19 cases of the new coronavirus. Interim President Janine Áñez said quarantine measure begin today and extends until April the 4th. Áñez said supermarkets, hospitals, banks and pharmacies will continue to operate as normal.
From Sunday, March 22nd at midnight and for 14 days, a total quarantine comes into effect throughout the whole country. It is a hard decision, but it's a necessary decision for everyone's well-being. From Sunday at midnight, we should be at home for 24 hours a day because we'll be safer at home. This is the best way to stop coronavirus.
Slovakia says it will ramp up efforts to fulfill its NATO obligations but will not escalate tensions with Russia. In a statement, Defense Minister Jaroslav Nad says the stall in Slovak activities seen during the last 4 years is definitely over. Nad said the new Slovak government will take a reserved position towards Russia. He said despite Russia's certain steps that cross the line of friendly relations, Slovakia will not escalate the tensions. This comes after a four-party coalition government took office in Slovakia as an immediate policy change amid the coronavirus outbreak. The new government was approved by the President Zuzana Chaptova yesterday. In Bangladesh, 15 people have been killed in a traffic accident in the southeastern part of the country. Police say 12 people were killed on the spot when a truck collided into a van in Chittagong. They said 3 succumbed to their injuries later in the hospital. One injured person, who is stable according to the hospital authorities, is still receiving the medical care. Road accidents are one of the top causes of the deaths in Bangladesh, with at least 4,628 people killed in 2019 across the country. Several hundred passengers are still stranded aboard at the Costa Luminosa cruise ship docked in Italy's Savona port city. Italy's local media says the first batch of the tourists, primarily Italian nationals from nearby regions, has begun to disembark. The local media says 84 people are in isolation aboard the ship after several coronavirus cases were discovered on it. The Italian authorities say they are discussing the procedure of the evacuation of the foreigners with relevant embassies. Another ship, Costa Victoria, is scheduled to arrive in Venice on 28th of March. Authorities in Italy's Veneto region have already denied docking in Costa Victoria. Researchers in Hong Kong say recovered coronavirus patients can be left with damaged lungs. Infectious Diseases Center Director says lung function can decline by 20 to 30% in some patients after recovery. Researchers said computer tomography has shown fluid or debris-filled sacs in the lungs, which may get worse as illness develops. Earlier, in another study, scientists in Wuhan analyzed 140 lung scans of COVID-19 patients and found a ground glass opacity in both lungs of each patient. Lung fibrosis cannot be cured because the scarred changes in the lung tissue do not regress. The demand for lemon, ginger and garlic in Ethiopia's capital of Addis Ababa has risen significantly since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. More in this report.
Africa was slower to feel the impact of the coronavirus than Asia or Europe, but over 33 African nations have now reported more than 600 cases. Shoppers at the Atikelt Tira vegetable market in Addis Ababa can be seen filling their bags with lemons, ginger and garlic. The three ingredients are a component of the traditional drink dawa, meaning medicine in Swahili.
This is naturally rich in vitamin C and full of natural herbs like lemon, ginger, garlic, honey and seasoning flavors. I often use it to recover from the flu, and by the same token, it will certainly help me fight corona as well.
This has led vendors to hike the prices since the outbreak of COVID-19. Sellers, however, say they are serving the public by providing produce needed for medical purposes.
You won't see a lemon seller as such now because they're being hunted and arrested, accused of hiking prices. But you shouldn't blame them because the wholesalers have increased the prices. We're trying to help the public because these are wanted for medical purposes. We didn't increase the prices too much, it's just a bit.
The virus had infected more than 300,000 people globally and killed over 13,000.
The COVID-19 pandemic may have put a damper on Mother's Day in Lebanon this year, but 3 students have come up with a new service to celebrate the occasion without flouting social distancing restrictions. More on this report.
In a quiet Lebanese town under lockdown over the novel coronavirus, a drone buzzed towards a balcony to deliver a red rose to a mother grinning in surprise. Down in the street in the coastal town of Guinea, 18-year-old Christopher Ibrahim texts a teenager who has ordered a flower drop-off for his mother. He slips a single rose in a ring hanging under the aircraft, and it lifts off into the air to carry the flower to its intended recipient.
The idea is I'm a drone operator. I film weddings and events with a drone. I'm studying engineering at the Lebanese University in Romania. So I come up with the idea of flying rose, where on Mother's Day we will deliver a rose to mothers via drone.
For a week, most of Lebanese have been ordered to remain at home to stem the spread of COVID-19. The airport has closed and all non-essential businesses have been told to shutter.
Another part of the project is about helping our country. Everything that we make from the project will be contributed to the Red Cross because they are the ones who need support the most during this period.
Ibrahim said each rose delivery costs between 10,000 to 20,000 Lebanese pounds. He added that the earning of this project will go to the Red Cross.
London-based startup OneWeb has launched another big batch of satellites from the space launching site in Kazakhstan. OneWeb Soyuz rocket carried 34 more spacecraft into orbit in a build-up of the firm's broadband internet constellation. Its payload took the current size of the startup's constellation to 74 satellites. OneWeb CEO Adrian Steckel said since online activity has surged amid the COVID-19 outbreak, it is useful to speed up operations. The completed network aims to achieve an orbital configuration of approximately 650 satellites with internet access being offered globally. OneWeb has so far raised £2.6 billion to fund its activities. Bright northern lights danced in the skies above Finland's northern Lapland region, putting the nature's best on display. Spring is one of the best times to see the northern lights, also known as the aurora borealis. This is because of augmented solar wind activity taking place in the Arctic Circle at that time of the year. Footage of the auroras was captured by an enthusiast from Rovaniemi, the capital of Lapland. The city is also known as the official home of Santa Claus. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Amazon says it will stop shipping non-essential products to consumers in Italy and France. The policy is an escalation in the e-commerce giant's response to preserve resources in the regions hard hit by the coronavirus outbreak. An Amazon spokesman said the company made the decision due to a spike in orders and the need to respect anti-coronavirus safety measures in the workplaces. Amazon considers baby products, health and household items, beauty and personal care, groceries and pet supplies as essential products. The world's largest online retailer said merchants on Amazon are open to sell and ship directly to customers in the region. Earlier this week, Amazon announced it will only receive vital supplies at its US and European warehouses until April the 5th to free up inventory space. It also announced a raise in overtime pay for the workers in its US warehouses, doubling the pay after 40 hours for overtime till May the 9th. The Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba has donated protective and medical equipment to Ethiopia. The first batch of the apparatus has reached the capital Addis Ababa as the coronavirus cases soared above 1,100 across Africa. In a statement, the company's co-founder, Jack Ma's Foundation, said the flight carried over 5 million face masks and kits for over 1 million detection centers. The local disease control center said that only patients with symptoms will be tested. In a tweet, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said that the distribution of the supplies will start from today. The virus has spread more slowly in Africa than in Asia and Europe, but has a foothold in 41 African nations. It has claimed 37 lives across the continent, 1.3 billion people so far. Australia has announced an additional $38.5 billion in an emergency fiscal package, shoring up the government's total spending to $109 billion. Canberra so far has pledged around 10% of Australia's GDP in a bid to shelter country's economy from coronavirus. More in this report.
Global economy has been rattled by the coronavirus pandemic with a recession imminent. Governments, global financial and monetary institutions have pledged trillions of dollars to cushion against the economic fallout of COVID-19. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the government is considering draconian measures to enforce social distancing to combat the coronavirus. Morrison said Australia will underwrite 50% in loans offered by local lenders to small and medium-sized companies.
The package of measures, combined with those we've already announced, sums to some $189 billion, for around 10% of the size of our economy. 10% of the size of our economy. That is unprecedented in this country. What we'll be doing, as I said, is focusing on those in the front line.
Costa Rica's Congress has approved $500 million line of credit with Development Bank of Latin America to combat the deadly disease, while European Commission approved 3 French state aid schemes to support its economy, mobilizing about $323 billion of liquidity. U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders said he is focusing on economic bailout instead of presidential race.
To me, this is an incredibly stressful time for everybody in this country. People are worried about getting sick. They're worried about the health of their kids. They're worried about the health of their parents. And we got to move aggressively, obviously, from a healthcare perspective. But at the very least, we should take the burden of financial duress off of people so they don't have that double issue that they have to struggle with.
The economy fallout of COVID-19 has choked global economies and sent global stock markets crashing to historic lows.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news.